There is none to comfort me. All alone I'll tread the winepress. All alone I'll drink the cup, shedding my blood for you to ransom, and my flesh for you to suck. I was bound and I was smitten, and they did spit on my face. I was stripped and I was scourged. I was condemned in your place. Your sins became my crown of thorns. Oh, that you would understand. Every time you sin anew, it's one more nail in my hand. Like a lamb brought to the slaughter, like a dumb sheep to be sheared. King, Creator, Lord and Master, by his creatures mocked and jeered, despised, rejected, with grief acquainted, and of men was not esteemed, bruised and wounded, sore afflicted, yet with his stripes we were healed. Lord, create in us the fountain, that with tears will ever flow, and a heart contrite and broken, and the spirit within renews. Oh, that we could shed the tears over your feet, pierced and bruised. Oh, that we always remember, for our sins you were abused.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So today, God willing, we're going to speak about the third topic in the series, wisdom and relationships. The first topic we spoke about navigating the temptations of flirting, the temptation to flirt with different people, That was like a whole topic in and of itself. And we spoke about how the flirting culture actually makes it very difficult for people to start relationships because it's difficult for people to know when someone is actually interested or not. And we spoke about the temptations associated with that. Last time we spoke about the topic finding the one, whether there is such a thing as the one or not, and how if we look at the example of Adam and Eve, who were definitely created for each other, and yet they have all kinds of problems in their relationship. So just because someone might say that these two people were quote unquote meant to be together, that in itself is not a license necessarily for a happy life. It has to do a lot with the characteristics of each person, the struggle of each person, the good qualities of each person, and we spoke at length about many different qualities that we should be looking for in trying to find a spouse. God willing, today we're going to speak about the third topic, which is courtship. Courtship, or otherwise known as dating. The reason that we sometimes distinguish the terms courtship and dating is because dating can be done in a very casual way for just wanting to date people. Whereas the term courtship implies more of it's dating for the purpose of marriage, wanting to marry. And that's why we tend to prefer the word courtship rather than dating, but it's essentially the same thing. Okay, so what is courtship? Courtship is the period of time between when you start dating and when or if you get married to that person, right? So let's say, you apply the criteria that we spoke about last time, and you've identified a person, at least in a very preliminary way, that you feel could be a good spouse for you and a good fit for you. I want to emphasize one thing, because sometimes people think that they can find out everything about a person before they actually take that step of actually having like formal communication with them and having like a period of courtship. Of course, period of courtship can cause, it's a risky thing, right? Because it can fail. And if it fails, it causes pain, causes awkwardness. People obviously want to avoid all of that. So sometimes people are hesitant to jump into the courtship because they're trying to find out from a distance everything about a person before they then take the next step. But a lot of times you really can't know. What you see from the outside isn't really the whole story or the whole picture. There are many people who present the best version of themselves all the time, but what you might find in reality is that they're very different than what they appear to be, or you find things about them that you otherwise would not have just through casual conversation. So at some point you have to take this step, unless you see some very clear red flags in a person. If otherwise you're interested in someone and you feel like they have many of those good qualities that we spoke about last time, that you would start this courtship process, and we're going to talk more about that. Traditionally, this courtship was the engagement. Nowadays, people, when they get engaged, it's typically when they've already decided that they want to get married. They pretty much, by the time they chose to get engaged, they already have a wedding date. And a lot of times they are already committed to getting married to each other, and there's really no more sense of we're getting to know each other. It's almost like a formality. A long time ago, and especially in Egypt, it used to be like this. Actually, like a man and a woman could not be together or going out doing anything unless they were engaged. So the engagement process was something that was much more essential and something that happened much earlier in order to allow them even to be seen together. Otherwise, it would be considered to be like a scandal and something that they were not allowed to do. Whereas in our culture here, nowadays, in modern times, and what's typically done, is engagement is done prior to marriage. And one of the reasons that it is still done is more for a formal reason. Maybe some people aren't aware of it. So in order to give the community a chance to speak up if there's any reason why these two people should not be married, the engagement process is done at least 40 days before the wedding in order to give people a chance to comment on this relationship. And to comment doesn't mean, it's like, no, I don't like them to be married, I don't think they should be married. It's like, let's say one of the people was actually already married, and this happens. It happens. There could be like a person who maybe is in Egypt, was married, they come to the States, they choose to get married again, and nobody has any idea that they're already married. The clergy, for instance, they don't know. And so this gives a chance, if there's anyone from the church, anyone from the community that knows that, hey, there's some big catastrophe associated with this person, to a chance to say something before the wedding is actually done, okay? That's one of the reasons that the engagement is done. The engagement is not a sacrament. The engagement is more just a blessing of the relationship, and it's a signing of a contract, which can be broken. There's actually a revocation of engagement contract or form that can be filled out if somebody is engaged and wants to break off the engagement. But obviously, you're only engaged to one person at a time. The purpose, yes?
I have a question about the placement of the ring. Why does the ring, because this was asked like a couple days ago at work, and I wasn't really sure what to answer.
Why does the ring start on the right hand and goes to the left hand?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if Dr. Abed maybe knows the answer to this.
The only thing I heard, I'm not sure that it's real, is that your left hand is closer to your heart. So the ring finger on your left hand is the closest to your heart, and that's where you put your ring after marriage. Why it goes on the right in the engagement, I have no idea.
It's far from your heart. Yeah.
Sorry, I know that was off topic.
No, and again, I want to emphasize that this is very cultural, right? Like, this is very cultural. Like, this is the way that people do it in Egypt. And it's something that's been adopted, and we like apply it in the church. But if people want to wear the ring on any finger or on whatever hand, it's not like there's a right or wrong to do it. But as a part of the ceremony, during the engagement ceremony, yes, the ring is on the right hand and then move to the left hand for the marriage. One other interesting point about the right is that during the engagement, the couple puts the rings on each other. So the man will put the ring on his fiancée and vice versa. But during the wedding, the priest is the one who puts the ring on both. And that's because it represents that the church has now married these two people, and just as the church has placed the ring on, the people cannot take the ring off, right? Whereas in the engagement, the people can take the ring off, meaning they can break the engagement, whereas in the wedding, they cannot. I also want to emphasize that the courtship is not just for two people to have fun, okay? And I say this because sometimes the period of courtship lasts for a very long time. And you sometimes get the sense that it's not like the two people are really just getting to know each other better and better and better and better. They kind of already know each other. They're just kind of in a waiting stage. Waiting for what? We don't know. We're just waiting. Maybe the people aren't even ready to be married, which is kind of a problem, because if they were not ready to be married, then they shouldn't have started this process, right? We mentioned last time, like, the longer you stay in a relationship like this, the more likelihood there is temptation. And you don't want to stay in a period of dating or engagement for an extended period of time. You want to start it when you're pretty much ready to get married, and you want to use the time as effectively as possible to get to know the person as well as you can in as short a time as you can, and then make a decision, right? And once the decision is made, you move forward, whether yes or no. Also, when this courtship period lasts for a very long time, you miss opportunities, because let's say it doesn't end up working out with this person, right? You've missed opportunities to get to know other people, and this is also why we try to be efficient in dealing with this process, right? And trying to be as quick as we can. So how do you go about it? Okay, how do you go about it? So I'm going to break it up into kind of the man's role typically and the woman's role typically. There are many options, okay? There isn't one way for it to start, okay, or for it to be done. I will say there are times where, let's say, there are people who are interested in, let's say one person is interested in the other. There are times where they will go to the priest and they will ask the priest to talk to the other person on their behalf and see if there's reciprocation. That does happen, but it doesn't have to happen that way. Typically, the man is the one who is taking the lead, and that's definitely what I recommend. Is the man is the one who takes the lead, meaning he's going to be the one to initiate some kind of conversation with a person that he is interested to getting to know more. And making the intention very clear, right? We spoke about in the very first topic about the flirting, is that there's a lot of confusion in this topic because there isn't a lot of clarity. Like, what is this? Like, why are you talking to me this much? Why are you texting me this much? Why are you asking about me? Why are you asking about personal things? But then you have not declared any kind of intention. You haven't actually clearly stated what this is, right? Again, because a lot of times there's people who just are interested in having relationships with people of the opposite sex and they enjoy that, right? But there's no clear intention. So it's very important for there to be a clear intention stated. Like, I would like to get to know you to see if, like, we would work as a couple, as for the sake of marriage. Be serious about it. Again, like, this isn't just like a period of having fun and enjoying our time. Like, even though it could be enjoyable, but don't let that be the primary focus, right? Let the focus again be of trying to answer this question. It's like, is this something that it has a long-term potential or not? This is not an ego boost. This is not a game to be played. This is not something that you do because you're trying to see if another person's interested in you or feeling good about yourself. If you are lacking in self-confidence, this is not the way to compensate, okay? Any man who, when you're asked to take this lead and to do this, you're putting yourself out there to potentially be rejected, right? And of course, rejection isn't nice. Nobody likes to be rejected. But the rejection is part of this process. And you will be rejected, right? If you're afraid of being rejected, you're not ever going to get married. I'll just put it to you straight, right? Rejection is part of this process. And rejection is not a reflection on you as being like, okay, I'm a bad person, or I'm a loser, or nothing like that, right? It takes a lot for two people to commit to wanting to spend the rest of their lives together. It takes a lot. A lot of things have to be right. A lot of things have to align, in order for that to work. And so there are many times where it doesn't align, right? And it's okay that it doesn't align. If God is not allowing it, then let it go. It's not good. It's not for us, okay? So it's okay to be rejected. But tell her your desire to know her better for the purpose of marriage. And again, as we mentioned the first time, this is not to be done in a flirtatious way, right? This isn't to send coded messages or coded signals, because again, it's not something that can be easily deciphered, okay? This is something that should be clearly stated. Also, if you aren't ready to get married now or in the very near future, then wait. Wait. Like, if you like a girl and you want to be closer to her, but you still have 5 years before you're done with school or something else that is making you unable to make a commitment, now is not the time to approach, right? Now is not the time to take a step because you're not ready to take any action. You're not ready to do anything with this. Again, the goal is not just like we enjoy spending time together. The goal is marriage or not, the decision to be made. So if you're not ready to support a family, if you're not emotionally ready, physically ready, financially ready, in whatever way, and we spoke about some of the ways that we should be ready last time, this is not the time to start this process. Wait until you're ready. Also, don't wait until you get definitive signs from her if she's interested. This is another pitfall that sometimes people fall into. A guy will come and they will try to interpret the behavior or the words of a girl and say, do you think she likes me? Okay? And it's like, oh, she said this, or she did that, or she sat in this place, or she didn't sit in this place, or she lives I don't know. I don't know. Like, and then you come and ask, like, the priest, it's like, so what do you think? It's like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. Go and talk to her. Like, don't wait. And again, this is out of fear of rejection. Fear of rejection means that I want something that's a guarantee, right? Like, I want to know that there's a 99% chance that if I go and talk to her, she's going to say yes, right? Obviously, that's more comfortable, right? Than you're going into it with a big question mark and you don't know. But a lot of times you're not going to know. And you don't need to wait until you see every possible sign. Because maybe she's interested and she's too shy to show you. Maybe she isn't really interested, but you would consider it if you asked her, right? Don't wait until there's necessarily like 100% mutual, emotional, connection between the two people from the beginning. Because maybe that doesn't happen, right? Maybe this is something that develops over time. Maybe you can maybe identify a person that you think would be good, but you don't have like a very, very strong emotional connection to her. You don't necessarily have to wait. You can still say, okay, let's try, let's see. You're gonna learn more about each other, and this whole thing is going to evolve over time. And that's why it's good to say, we're going to set a time limit, okay? And I'm a big proponent of milestones, okay? First milestone is like very preliminary. Let's say 1 month, okay? 1 month, it says you're going to find out if this is viable at all. If this is viable at all. If there's any potential at all in this. And the reason I say 1 month is after one time, after one date, you don't necessarily know. People are awkward, people might like come off in the wrong way, they might not communicate well, they might not know what to do, things might not go right after one time. Don't judge after one time. Give it 1 month, okay? This is my suggestion, it's an arbitrary time, but this is, I think it's long enough to get a sense and short enough to not really waste a lot of your time if things aren't going to work. After the 1 month, then you say, okay, there's preliminary agreement. We still don't know each other well after 1 month. 1 month is not at all to get to know each other well, but at least we feel like we want to continue. So, or we don't. If we don't, then we're done. And that's easy, right? And this is a good point for both people to evaluate, right? To take it seriously, to consider everything that they've seen, and then to make a decision. And both people know going into it that we have this deadline, okay? Then give it another however many months, 3 months, 6 months, and this time, and again, the timing is going to depend on things like, okay, is it a long distance relationship? How often do we get to see each other? Is one person so busy that they barely have any time to see the other person or not? All of these are just general guidelines. After the 1 month set, like, okay, let's say 6 months, we're going to get to know each other, and at that point, with the guidance of your father of confession, try to evaluate all the things that you learn, right, objectively. Are there any red flags? Are there incompatibilities? Are there things that I didn't know from the beginning that now are upsetting me? And then see, okay, is this a serious issue or not? All of that. After that period of time is done, then you're kind of like in the stage of, okay, we either are gonna break it off, it's not working, or we're pretty sure like it's going to work. And then maybe you could give yourself a little bit more time, or if you're absolutely sure, you can say, okay, we're ready. But again, it's important not to make the time too short, but also not to make the time too long. Again, it's okay if she says no. Like I said, rejection is a part of this. It's okay that it's not a personal. Don't take it in a personal way. It's okay. Like take it as like, okay, this is not God's will. God did not want this to move forward. What about on the women's side? Okay. So when you're interested in a guy, because we are saying the guy is the one who should take the lead. So what do you do? Okay, and we're actually going to study the story of Ruth and Boaz, and to kind of look at that story and how that all happened. But be visible, okay, but without flirting. And I say this, okay, be visible, meaning show that you're interested in him, show that you care about him, show that you're interested in his life, but don't do it in a sexually provocative way. Right? We spoke about this last time. Don't do it in a way that makes him emotionally charged. Because you're not trying to manipulate. Because this is also for you not an ego boost. This is also not for you like, oh wow, I'm so happy that this guy's interested in me. And a lot of times girls are interested in only that. Right? All they care about is that part. Is the ego boost part. Is the he's attracted to me part. But you don't want anything else. And that can be very confusing for the guys. Okay, because they're like, she's doing all these things that make it seem like she's interested in me, but then she isn't, right? Like when I try to talk to her, she's not interested. Or, she acts this way, but she never texts me, or she doesn't respond to my texts or something. So be visible and show attention and interest in a way that's not sexually provocative, because this is not a manipulation. This is presenting. It's like, are you interested? Yes or no. It is not, I'm going to manipulate you into being interested. I'm not manipulating you to make you feel a certain way so that I can feel good about myself. Let him know who you are, what you believe in, and what you stand for. Because in the end, like, you have to present yourself truthfully, and this is the same with the guys as well, like you're presenting yourself truthfully. You're not doing things or stating things or pretending to be something that you're not, right? Because you know that if you do present yourself as something that you're not, you might get more attention, or you might get someone to be interested who otherwise wouldn't. But it's only a matter of time before the holes, in my narrative begin to crumble, right? Don't present yourself as being something that you're not. Also, and we spoke about this also last time, the idea that you're going to radically change your life for the sake of a relationship typically fails, right? You're not going to, someone who never prays at all is not all of a sudden going to pray like 6 times a day because they're interested in a guy who happens to want that, right? Be who you are, be yourself, right? You're going to marry someone who is going to see you and know you as you are. Show genuine interest in who he is and what he does, right? And we spoke about service, right? Like, make him feel like you care about him as a person, okay? But this is all without flirtation. You don't want a man who is just going to go after any woman who flirts with him. And this is important as well. If the guy is interested in you just because you're flirting with him, then that means he's going to be interested in other women that flirt with him too, right? Flirting should not be the sign that a guy's just gonna follow anyone who happens to be flirting with him. No, if he has a good and strong character, then he's going to evaluate you based on who you are, not based on this type of behavior. But one who respects you for who you are and your good qualities. You want someone who will respect you for the qualities that you have. And it can be hard to wait. And I've heard this from many women, especially women who are interested in certain guys, and there's waiting for the guy to do something. Okay? Part of that problem is either the guy is too afraid to do anything, right? Or maybe he's not interested in you, right? So if you are interested in the guy and you've done all these things that we've talked about, and you've presented who you are, and you've showed him care, and you've given him attention in a good way and all of this, and he still hasn't taken any kind of action, don't wait forever, right? Don't wait forever. Maybe he's not interested. Maybe he's not considering you. Maybe for whatever reason, that's not going to happen. Even if the reason is he's too shy or afraid, you can't wait forever. You can't wait forever him to take an action. I will say there are times where maybe in a situation like this, there are girls who will come to Abuna and they will say, hey, this is a situation, and try to see maybe what he thinks. And sometimes Abuna will offer, it's do you want me to go talk to him? Okay? And then it can become kind of okay, well, yes, talk to him, but don't tell him that I'm asking. And then it's okay, and then you say something, and then they're did she ask me to tell you? Did she ask me to tell you this? And I'm no. That's why being a priest is hard. But sometimes I will say, because there is a lot of kind of fear and awkwardness in this, sometimes Abuna will offer to be involved to try to help facilitate something if he feels like maybe this could work. So I'm just giving that as a potential option. But again, if the man you're interested in does not make a move, don't wait for it indefinitely. Okay. So I'm gonna speak a little bit about this case study, Boaz and Ruth, to try to see what are some elements we can learn. Because what they went through was courtship. It was courtship. And what are the elements of the courtship that we can learn from? So just to give you a background, okay, so there was a man, his name was Elimelech, and he was married to Naomi. They were both Jewish. They moved to Moab, which is a region of the Gentiles, and they had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And those sons married Moabite women in Moab, and married Gentile women. And then the 2 sons and the father, Elimelech, they all died, okay? And so what was left was Naomi. She was a widow, and her the 2 wives of her 2 sons were both widows, okay? Naomi decides she's going to return to Israel. Ruth, because she really loves her mother-in-law so much, she decides that instead of going and finding another man to marry from her own people, she's going to stay with her mother-in-law, and she's going to move to Israel, okay, with her. When she moves to Israel, okay, both Ruth and Naomi have the mindset Ruth needs to get married because she's of an age where she needs to get married. She can't continue to live with Naomi indefinitely. So she's definitely looking out for this. She wants this, right? It's in her mind, okay? So the first thing we learn about Ruth is that she has a heart of service because she really cares so much about her mother-in-law that she would be willing, like it would have been much easier for her to stay in Moab among her own people and find someone to marry there, right? But she chose not to do that. She chose to go and serve her mother-in-law. The second thing is we see that Ruth actively wanted to be married, right? Like she didn't just randomly just go about her life and then suddenly something happened and she's like, oh, okay, maybe this, right? Yes, there was things, of course, that happened to her out of her control, but in her mind was the thought, I want to get married, right? So when you are wanting to get married, do things and go places that you could potentially meet people, right, to get married. Again, I'm not telling you to go and do things where that is like your only aim, but be social. Like in order to meet people, you have to be social. You have to go to retreats or conventions. You have to come to Bible studies. You have to go to a place where people are, right? And then you say, okay, God, if this, if it's your will that I meet somebody, let it be according to your will. But I'm going to do my part. I'm not going to stay locked up in my closet, and then be like, okay, she's going to come or he's going to come to my door and ring the doorbell. No, I have to do something, okay? So we're going to read now from chapter 2, okay? Now that Ruth and Naomi are back in Israel. So it says, there was a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech. His name was Boaz. So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him, in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So what does this tell us about what is in Ruth's mind? She says she wants to find favor with him. She likes him. She's a relative of the family. She needs someone to marry her and to take care of her, because at that time women couldn't take care of themselves, right? She needed to be married. So she wanted to be married, and she believed that the family that she was from, they were good people, and she identified Boaz as a good man, okay? So she wanted to get attention from him. So she said, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain. So in the Old Testament, God gave the law to the people and said, whenever you harvest your harvest, do not harvest 100% of it. Leave like the leftovers of the harvest on the ground, so that the poor people that are not landowners can come and take of this harvest for themselves and feed themselves from it. So it was a type of welfare, like a type of social service that the rich people would give to the poor by not harvesting 100% of their harvest. They would leave some of it on the ground, and then the poor people would come and glean, meaning they would come and pick up the leftover pieces in order to take it. So here, in Ruth, in her own mind, she is saying to her mother-in-law, let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him, in whose sight I might find favor. Because she thought, maybe if I go to this land where maybe I will meet him, maybe he will see me, maybe this is an opportunity that something can happen between the two of us. Now, again, this is very a long shot, right? Any person could think, it's what is the likelihood that I'm going to go and glean in the land of this man and that he's going to be interested in me at all? Of course, there was a big disparity here between his wealth and her poverty, right? But she still thought, this is something that I'm going to try to do. She spoke with Naomi and she got her permission to do so. And she told her, go, my daughter. This is the other thing we learn here, is that she got guidance, okay? Sometimes people, when they're interested in another person, they chose just to go after it without any guidance, without knowing really am I being objective? What is the reason I'm interested in this person? Am I just very attracted to them for something that's trivial and frivolous? Am I ignoring red flags about who they are because I'm so interested in something that I'm very emotionally attached to? And so it's good to get guidance. It's go to someone that you trust. Go to your parents, right? Go to your father confession. even your other friends that know this person, say, what do you think about this person? Do you think this person? And go to people who are going to be honest with you, okay? That also have the right priorities and values, okay? That are going to advise you based on good principles, not based on frivolous, superficial principles, okay? So she asked her mother-in-law for permission, and her mother-in-law gave her her blessing. He said to her, go, okay? Then she left and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And after she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless you. Why do I mention this part? It shows that this man, Boaz, was a godly man even before he met Ruth. Like, that was who he was. Like, he wasn't pretending to be. He saw these people, he said to them, God be with you, and they responded to him. I mention it again because we're trying to emphasize what are the qualities, the good characteristics of both of these people that are going to cause them to be attracted to one another. Okay? And we see in the story of Boaz and Ruth is they were attracted to each other for very good reasons, like for high quality, good characteristics that are in each of them. There is no mention of frivolousness here, okay, in any of the things that they're talking about. So I mentioned this a lot of times because the women, a lot of times they're interested in a man, but he has a lot of changing he has to do, and they make it their project that they're going to change him in all the ways that they think he needs to be changed. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. You either pick a person who already has the qualities you admire and that are good, or you're going to be miserable with him. Okay, and that's just the fact. Okay, so if you see him having those good qualities and you want to go forward, go forward. If you see that he has, and I'm not talking about that he has to be perfect, okay, and I'm not trying to say that he can't grow and change in his life, because obviously people grow and change and evolve in their life, but you have no guarantee of in what way he's going to change, right? Some people change for the worse. So be happy with who he is and be happy with who she is on that day, not because of some future expected change or hope of change, or I'm going to get her or him to change, okay? That doesn't work. Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? So the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered and said, it is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. And she said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and has continued from morning until now, though she rested a little in the house. So we see that Boaz actually noticed her, okay? He asked about her. He said, whose young woman is this? Okay, who is this who is coming to glean? And so he was told about her. She is the one who came with her mother-in-law from Moab and so on, okay? And we see something about Ruth here, is that she asked the reapers, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she's very humble and asking for this. This is something that actually was her right. Okay, but she came and she asked, can I please come and do this? Okay, and so he noticed her. Then Boaz said to Ruth, you will listen, my daughter, will you not? Do not go to glean in another field, nor go from here, but stay close by my young women. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Have I not commanded the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn. Okay, so what did Boaz do?
First move. The first move.
Okay, yeah, he did the first move. Yeah, he made, what was the first move? Huh? What was the first move? Generosity. He served her. He gave her something good. And he made her feel like she was special to him because he granted her something. He told her, don't even go to the other fields to glean. Like, she could have gone to any field to glean. He said, don't go to the other fields to glean. Stay here. And not just that, he said, I have already informed the other people not to touch you, not to harass you, not to bother you, and essentially to give you anything you want. So what kind of message does that send? Like, okay, like he likes her, but he's doing it how? He's doing it by doing good for her. He's not being enticing. He's not flirting with her. He's not trying to manipulate her sexually. He's not trying to get her to think things or to. He didn't go out straight up and say, "I want to marry you." Okay, it's maybe too early for this, but he's showing kindness and goodness to her, and this is going to make her feel like cared for. And this is actually the thing she needed the most. You know, like when you think about in Ruth's position, she was very vulnerable, right? She was poor. She was in a foreign nation. She doesn't have a husband. She doesn't have a family beyond just Naomi. All right, she doesn't have any family, and so for him to come and provide these things for her, this is like him giving her the thing she needs the most, right? He identified her needs. Her needs was that she needs food and she needs protection, and he offered that to her. He said, "Come and take as much food, as much water, and I'm protecting you. I'm keeping everyone. No one's going to harm you or harass you." Like he used his position and his authority to do good for her. Okay. Also, he offered her more than what she asked, because she's just asking to glean. He said, not only can you come and glean, but you can also drink, right, from the water. So he went like above and beyond what she was asking. So she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? Now remember, when she was speaking to Naomi before, she said, what? I want to go here so I can find favor with him. Okay? And this is what exactly has happened. She's saying, why have I found favor in your eyes, though I am a foreigner? And Boaz answered and said to her, it has been fully reported to me all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know before. The Lord repay your work, and a full reward be given you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. So why is it that he noticed her?
Because of her good. Because of her good.
Because of her good. Because of her service. But he saw good qualities in her, and so she's asking him, why is it that I have found favor in your eyes? He says, because you have exemplary service for your mother-in-law, right? Like you're doing above and beyond what anyone would do. You have left your father and your mother, you have left your land of your birth, and you've come to a people whom you did not know. All why? For the service of this woman, right? For the service of your mother-in-law. So he was attracted to her because of her good and rare qualities, right? That was the reason why. It wasn't for anything superficial. It wasn't for anything frivolous, right? And the interactions between the two of them have been very honorable, right? And have been very truthful and very open, okay, to each other. He even says that she is worthy of reward from God because of what she has done. Then she said, let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. So she recognized and appreciated like what he had done for her, right? It was positive, it was kind, personal reaction. It was not sexualized in any way. It was based on care and service, not on anything frivolous. And she identified that she is not like the other maidservants because she's a Moabite woman, right? She is not a Jewish woman like all of the others. Now Boaz said to her at mealtime, come here and eat of the bread, and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed parched grain to her, and she ate and was satisfied and kept some back. So again, he treated her in a special way. Like at this dinner, he's inviting her to eat and to partake of his own food, right? Again, giving her what she needs. And he treated her in a different way than other people. Again, this made Ruth feel like he cared about her, like he was a good and honorable man and he cared about her. And when she rose up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Also let grain from the bundles fall purposefully for her. Leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. So he's telling the people, let her take whatever she wants. Like even if it's not the gleaning of the stuff that's fallen, let her glean even from among the sheaves, meaning the full pieces that have, that will be harvested. Let her take like straight up the crops, okay? And do not reproach her, and let the grain fall intentionally, purposefully for her. Okay, so again, he cared about her and he gave her this special treatment and even to the point of like going far, far beyond like what would be expected of him. Okay. After this, what happens? There's other stuff in between, so I kind of skipped it. But what happens? Like the main thing that happens after this is Naomi tells Ruth to find Boaz sleeping on the ground on the threshing floor. Okay, and she told her to go and uncover his feet and to lie on the ground at his feet. This was a Jewish custom. Maybe it sounds strange to us, but this was a Jewish custom. Essentially, she is expressing her desire for him to redeem her. The idea of the Redeemer, okay, was a custom in Israel that whenever, let's say, a woman is married and her husband dies, the brother of that woman, the brother of the man who died would have, take the role of redeemer, meaning he would take this woman as his own wife, as like a protector for her. So there was this idea of the redeemer was something that was actually in the law, something that a person could fulfill this role of redeemer. And so it's essentially when she's laying at his feet and uncovering his feet, she made her desire clear that she wanted him to be her redeemer. Now, she is not Jewish, right? She is Moabite, but she was applying this as according to the Jewish law. He actually, when he saw this, he said, there is another relative that is closer to me, to you, than me. Let me go ask him first if he will redeem you. And he went and said no. And so then Boaz took her as the redeemer, and he took her to be his own wife. What I want to emphasize here is everything was done very honorably, very respectfully, very quickly. There was games being played. There was no toying happening. When you start dating a person, like I said, get guidance. Let your parents know that this is happening. Let your father of confession know that this is happening. Ask him about it before you start, because sometimes there's things that you're not aware of that maybe he is. But do it in a very serious and proper way. This is the best way for such a relationship to start that has the greatest chance of success. Because this is, again, what you are seeking. Like, you're seeking to have a partner that will be with you for the rest of your life. So what are some lessons that we learned from this? The first is, God rewarded the good works of Ruth, right? Because Ruth was a servant, and because she served her mother-in-law, God allowed this situation to happen, right? He allowed her to come and to very quickly find this man Boaz, who was a distant relative of her family, and for her to find favor in his eyes and for them to get married together. It was like God is rewarding her for her service of what she had done. She made a big sacrifice to come with her mother-in-law, and God saw that and he allowed it to happen. Does this mean that every person who is a good servant is guaranteed to be married? No. Okay, it's not. But what I'm saying is, God looks at us and he looks at what we have done, and he rewards us in different ways. And one of the ways that God rewarded Ruth in this case is through this. Boaz noticed Ruth for her kindness and virtue. That was the reason he was attracted to her, because of something good and virtuous in her. We learn also that they treated each other respectfully. Boaz expressed his care for Ruth in the way he gave her special attention and privileges. Ruth was able to communicate discreetly her interest in Boaz, and so she was able to do it without being very, without being flirtatious, without being very direct. She made it clear that she was interested in him, and God was guiding the situation and ended up leading them to marry. Okay, so this is just an example for us to kind of meditate on, of like an example of kind of a courtship that happened in the Bible. What if you go through this process, you begin the courtship, okay, and after some time, whether a little bit of time or a lot of time, you decide, you know what, this person doesn't have the qualities that I'm looking for. And we spoke last time about a lot of the qualities we should be looking for. Say you get to know this person, maybe it appeared like to you from the beginning that this person does have those qualities, but now I'm gonna get to know them better, they don't have those qualities, okay? And I feel like I need to end this, okay? I need to end this period of courtship, okay? The first thing is reject with kindness. Don't reject with anger. Don't reject by being extra brutal with like telling the person everything that's wrong with them, okay? Because that can be very painful, or it can be very painful for them. Even if it's some things that they need to hear, okay? It's not your job to fix them. It's not your job to change them. It's not your job to, God did not send you so that you can be the one to tell them everything that's wrong about them. From your side, you decided, you know what, I don't think this is going to work. Thank you, and you don't even necessarily have to give a reason. Sometimes you can give a reason, but your job is not to, don't end it in a brutal and painful way for them. Don't tell them what all their weaknesses are, right? You would not like it if you were put in that position. If somebody broke up with you and said, oh, it's because you're selfish, and it's because, you're this and that, and they listed all your weaknesses, right? That would not help you, okay? So keep in mind that a person you are rejecting is going to be in a fragile and vulnerable state, so you don't want to pile on to that with that. So do it with kindness. Also, don't talk to your friends about all of their weaknesses and spread rumors about them, okay? You're gonna get insight into this person, maybe more than anyone else, right? From the community, any other people from their friends, or just the general people in their friend group and so on. You're gonna know things about them that maybe nobody else is going to know, and that puts you in a position of responsibility. Because maybe you're upset with them, maybe you're angry about something that they did that makes you kind of feel like it's your right to go and talk about them. Don't do it. Especially when you have a small community like what we have, and everybody knows everybody, right? If you go and start speaking about the weaknesses of a person to your friends, then that information is going to spread to everyone, and that person is going to be like labeled as this is the person who is such and such, and it's going to ruin their reputation. Okay, that's not your job. Right? Your job, you're not the one to go and to report, like, here's all the failures and the weaknesses of this person, because again, you wouldn't want the same thing to be done to you. Okay? Even in the relationship, like even if you haven't decided to reject yet or to end the relationship, still keep the details about the relationship private and share them only like with your father at confession, or you can share some things with your parents to get advice, but don't go to your friends and tell them all the details of everything that's happening. Because again, you don't know if this relationship's gonna work or not. You don't want to ruin the reputation of the other person. Okay, that's very important. Also, when two people, especially if they're like in a close-knit group, okay, try to have a relationship, and let's say it doesn't work, okay, it creates obviously awkwardness, right, between them. And maybe there's, a small group of people that all are friends together, and now it's like, okay, is that person able to be approached by anyone else or not? Like, okay, it's like, okay, my friend was with this person, and now they broke off, and now I'm interested in that person. Am I not allowed to do anything? What should I do? And so on. Look, again, it's okay. Like everyone has to deal with the situation in a responsible way and in a mature way. To deal with things in a mature way means like we acknowledge that not everybody can be compatible and fit with everyone else. And it's okay if my friend tries. Maybe that's difficult for me to accept that. Maybe it's difficult for me to see that happening. But if that happens, don't let that be an occasion for you to like break your friendship with your friend. Now, I have seen cases that's worked well, where let's say you have two people who are friends, one person was with the girl, didn't work out with her, and then another person tried, that the guy talks to his other friend and gets his blessing, says, I'm interested in her, I want to get your blessing to go and like talk to her and whatnot. I thought that was a very honorable thing to do, okay? The answer should be yes. Okay? Because again, like, if we look at this whole thing from the perspective of God is the one who is preparing and doing what is good for us. Maybe I think I know what is good for me, and it doesn't work, and I get disappointed and upset. But in the end, we should defer back to what we believe. We believe that, okay, if God didn't allow it, that means it wasn't good. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. In Proverbs 14:12. I always just remember that verse for so many things. So, if that was really the case, that this wasn't good for me, that means I don't want it. Even if I'm the one who got rejected. Even if I'm the one who got rejected and it hurts to be rejected, if this wasn't God's will for me in my life, then I don't want it. If it's God's will for someone else, then fine. If it's a person that's close to me, yeah, maybe that's difficult for me to accept and to deal with it. But it's fine. Okay, it's fine. Like, we shouldn't create stigma in our community by this kind of thing. Okay? Everyone is just trying to figure out, like, what is God's will, you know? And it's a confusing process, it can be a painful process, and we don't want to add more, like, stress to it by now, like, having, like, friendships break up because people are just trying to figure out, like, what is God's will for them. How to deal with rejection. Okay, so if I'm rejected, learn from the situation, understand as much as you can. Okay, why is it that I was rejected? Did I do something that I shouldn't have done? Did I say something? Is there something about me that maybe I didn't see before that I should be aware of? Okay, maybe there's nothing. Maybe the reason that I was rejected had nothing to do with anything bad that I've done at all. Okay, so I'm not saying there necessarily has to be, but just consider it, think about it. Also, you learn from any kind of broken relationship. You learn what is it that you like and what is it that you do not like. You know, you learn what is it that you're really looking for. You know, for instance, someone might be in a relationship with someone who has like a very, you know, like a certain vice, like something that is really, you know, bothers the other person very much. And they never really knew that this would bother them so much because they never were in such a relationship before. But now that they have been, and they realize that this specific characteristic, they really, really can't stand it. Now, the next time you try to be in a relationship, you know that, right? Meaning you're going to be more aware and in tune with that specific criteria. Be like, okay, if this person has anything remotely like this, then I'm not even going to try. I'm going to stay clear of that. You learn more about yourself as well, right? Not just about what you want, but you learn about who you are. You learn about kind of your own weaknesses, because what you'll find is that your weaknesses are now going to start to kind of rear their ugly head and start to affect someone else. You know, a person who's single their whole life, to a large extent, your weaknesses are affecting you predominantly. Yes, our weaknesses do affect the people around us, but they're going to affect my significant other, my spouse, much more than they will affect anyone else. And so sometimes I don't realize that. I don't see my failures. I don't see my weaknesses. I don't see the wrong ideas or thoughts that I have, or the weaknesses that I have clearly, until I'm in a relationship where like everything I do or say is like now hitting this person, and I can see the reaction. I can see how it's affecting them. And so I learn a lot about myself. And actually one of the reasons that rejection is a good thing, is a positive thing, is that we go through this process and we learn more about ourselves. For the most part, most people are not going to marry the first person that they try with, right? Because that would be kind of unrealistic. And also you maybe not benefit from a lot of this pain that comes with rejection, right? That comes with breakups. Learning about yourself. You can ask yourself, should I have done something differently? Right? Like, is there something I could have done differently? What is it that I learned? What is it that I get? How to deal with it. Don't feel despondent, okay? Like, don't feel like, you know, take it so personally to yourself, like this is like something that is going to destroy me, even though maybe you can feel that way sometimes. But take it as, what is it that what I can learn from this, right? And realize, again, rejection is part of this process. It's normal. You're not the only one who will be rejected. Also, don't let the fear of rejection keep you from trying again, okay? Because sometimes when people experience rejection, They feel like, I never want to go through anything like that again. I'm never going to try again, right? It's a fear, right? Again, don't let that happen. Like, understand it. Understand what this process looks like. We spoke about this, how to deal with people you have been rejected or been rejected by your friends. How do you get to know each other? Okay, we covered some of this. Now that you're officially dating, doesn't mean that you're in a relationship yet. And this is something like very important. Don't consider yourselves a couple, right? Until you're much further down the process. Not just because we started talking, right? It means that like now we are together. We're like boyfriend and girlfriend. You don't know yet. Don't be too excited because this might not work out. I think last time somebody asked how we can guard our hearts from being like going too quickly into this or losing our objectivity, right? Always put in your mind, especially toward the first half of your getting to know the person, this might not work. This might not work. This is an experiment. We're trying it. We're not sure yet, right? Let yourself be as objective as possible. Don't be overly taken with your emotions and lose your objectivity. And again, don't even flirt now at this point. Like, don't let flirting, like even now that you have started this, don't let flirting be something that makes you lose your objectivity. How do you get to know each other? First is ask a lot of questions. Okay, ask a lot of questions. You want to know and understand the person, right? Again, this is a process about making a decision. It's not just about enjoying our time. Ask a lot of questions. Treat it like an interview, right? Come up with questions like, what is some important things that are important to ask? Talk as often as you can and see each other as often as you can. Sometimes this can be difficult if the two people are working and they have very rigorous schedules and the amount of times they can see each other, but as much as possible, talk to each other every day, see each other as often as you can, because the faster you get to the point of making a decision, the better for the two of you. You want to decide as fast as reasonably possible. Set a timeline, like I mentioned, right? Maybe set multiple milestones of what you want to kind of have accomplished in those milestones, and communicate them early on so that both people understand, like, what is this going to look like. Remember that the goal is to decide if you're suitable to marry. Get guidance from parents and FOC and trusted people. If it is long distance, try and see each other in person as fast as possible. Also, don't make your relationships public from the beginning. If you don't know if this is going to work, if you don't yet know, you don't want the added pressure of everybody being aware that this is a thing, on top of like the pressure of already trying to figure out like, is this the right thing or not? Especially when two people are from the same community, right? Avoid making it public as long as possible until you're sure that this is something that is going to work, that you've both kind of gone to know each other very well, and then you can make it public. If after your designated time period, both of you feel comfortable, and your parents and your father confession are in agreement, then you can move to the next phase where there is a preliminary agreement to get married. Okay, at that point, you've gone through the sufficient time, everyone is in agreement, there doesn't appear to be any red flags, then you can start speaking about marriage and start thinking about things like engagement and marriage dates and so on, making the relationship public. Again, still guard yourselves. You're not married yet, and this stage is maybe the most difficult stage because people kind of feel like very close to the person, and so you kind of almost to some sense feel like you're already married, but you're not. Okay, you're not. Be very careful to not let yourself be alone in private with the other person, which can lead to sin. Okay, and believe me, this can destroy a relationship. Okay, this can destroy a relationship. There was actually a study that was done, and you know, like the maybe what would seem like common sense would be that, you know, if two people live together before they get married and get to know each other well, in that context of living together, then they would actually have a more successful relationship after they get married, because you would be able to weed out people that, you know, maybe I'm not going to get along with. So of course this is a worldly way of thinking. But actually they did this study and they found that people who live together before getting married actually have a higher divorce rate than people who do not. Okay, so again, guard yourself. You're not married yet. until you're actually married. Okay? Touching, don't do it. And I say this, right? Look, one thing leads to another thing. One thing leads to another thing. Especially when you feel very close to a person of the opposite sex. Don't open the door, right, to temptation by starting to do things like we're holding hands and we're sitting close and we're hugging each other and we're doing this stuff. That's the beginning, okay, of more. Stop it before it starts, okay? You don't have to be close like that. You don't have to, okay? It's not good to be. Like you're asking for failure. Like it's kind of like you're putting yourself like in a situation where you have no choice but to fail. Okay? Keep yourself distant, like from the other person physically. Don't get so close to where this is going to become an issue. And like I said, don't be alone together in private. Because when you're alone together in private, this is when you have more freedom to do these things. Don't trust yourself. Okay? Joseph the righteous did not trust himself. He ran away naked from Potiphar's wife because he didn't want to fall into sin with her. Okay? Don't trust yourself. Finally, marriage planning. So, marriage planning is the first time, most likely, that the two of you are going to be making serious decisions together. Right? Up until this point, everything was just kind of social interactions and getting to know each other and doing things and conversations and so on. Marriage planning is the first time you're actually going to be making a lot of decisions, and those decisions are going to involve a lot of different factors. It's going to involve first time, obviously, for most people, right, getting married once. The first time they've ever gone through this, there's going to be a lot of new things. There's a timetable, and deadlines, and stress. There's a lot of money being spent, that's stress. There's differences of opinion between the two people, that's stress. There's the opinions of the in-laws of what they think should be done, that's more stress, and the tests of communication and boundaries. There's going to be a lot of things in the marriage planning that are going to be unexpected, last-minute changes, things that don't pan out the way that they should be. All of these things are like the first test of the relationship, right? The first real test. Like, is your relationship going to stand stress and difficult situations, right? This is a way for you to see. Now, at this point, once you're already planning for marriage, to decide to break it off is more difficult because you're already so far along in the process and you've already made this decision. But all I'm saying is, you're not married until you're married. Okay, keep your eyes open and see what it is that you can learn. There will be some things that you learn about your spouse during the marriage process that you did not know before. And that's for sure. There's going to be things that you learn about them during the process of wedding planning that you did not know about them because you never had to observe them or interact with them in this way before. But in the real world and after you're married, you're going to be interacting with them this way all the time. In your finances and, okay, you know, our roof is leaking, how much are we going to spend to fix it? You know, how are we going to arrange ourselves, our house? You know, how are we going to raise our kids? There's going to be all kinds of decisions that are made that you have to work together as a team. And again, the marriage planning is maybe the first time that you see this really happening. So keep your eyes open as you're still evaluating the person. Also, it's a good opportunity to learn and set boundaries with parents and in-laws. One of the difficult things about marriage is like when Christ said you are going to leave your father and mother and be joined to your wife and the two will become one flesh. So just there is the formation of a new family between these two people. There is also a significant change in a previous family that existed from before. And depending on how mature and wise the parents are, they can make this either a painless process or they can make it a very painful process, right? If the parents are aware and understanding from a long time ago that they prepared themselves for this, that the day will come when their children are going to leave home and this is actually a good thing and this is actually what they were raising them for all of their life so that they can actually go and live and be independent, and now they've succeeded in this and they're going to give you your space and independence, and they're going to have good boundaries with you, and they're not going to try to manipulate you or make you feel guilty or try to change who you are or whatever, then that's great. Usually there is some transition period where the parents are still kind of attached to their kid, and are wanting to make decisions on their behalf, are disagreeing with decisions that they're making with their spouse, and this is going to start to cause conflict. So dealing with this in a wise way, setting boundaries with parents and in-laws, right, in a wise way, where we do it with compassion and love and patience, but at the same time, we're not letting other people control us, right, is a good time to start setting those boundaries, because you need to continue those boundaries throughout your whole relationship. And seeing, again, how the two work together as a team to accomplish this is very important. The last point is be realistic, because marriage is not a fairy tale, right? A lot of times people get into marriage thinking that it is a fairy tale, and they get quickly disappointed when they found that it's very different than maybe what they imagined it to be, right? Your life will continue as it was. All the problems that exist in your life will still exist. All of the concerns in the world are still concerns. Your job is still there. You're still going to have to go. You're still going to have to make money. You're still going to have taxes to pay. You're going to still have, misunderstandings, and you're still going to have all that stuff is going to continue. It's not suddenly because you got married, the world has been transformed to a paradise. And actually, even though marriage, has a lot of fulfilling elements, but it also has a lot of challenges, has a lot of new challenges that you're going to be experiencing that you've never experienced before. So go into it with a sober mind. It is a good thing. It is something God created. It's something that He placed in us, a desire for companionship. And He said it is not good for man to be alone. But that doesn't mean that, and like we talked about last time, just because it's not good for man to be alone doesn't mean that it's easy to be together. Okay? And so identify that and work on yourself and be sober-minded going into it and be prepared for conflicts. They say like the first year of marriage, there can be a lot of conflicts because you're getting to know each other in a new way, and you're having to share things in a new way that you've never done before. So be very careful going into it with the right expectation, and don't freak out, when things don't go exactly the way you want them to go, right? It's okay, it's normal, right? Just be prepared for it. Okay, that's all I had. Before we take off for a break. You guys have any questions? Yes.
You said to talk to our FOCs very early on. So assuming that our FOC doesn't know this person, what information should we be going to him with and to seek this guidance?
I mean, it's not necessarily that you're going to go and report like all the details about this person to them, but at least he's going to be aware that you've started this relationship, and he knows you, right? So he knows things about you that he might want to guide you in, or to help you to be aware of as you start this relationship. So it's good that he would be aware of it from the beginning. Yeah, even if he doesn't know who the person is at all, just give him a heads up that this is happening. Okay. Yes.
You recommended not being public, but I think there's a lot of information that can be gained from being a couple in the community. How do you recommend navigating?
I mean, it will become public at some point, okay, but it doesn't have to become public from the very beginning. And it's up to you to decide at what point that is. So like, for instance, in the example that I gave, you have like 1 month at the beginning, where it's like a very preliminary, does this have any potential to work at all? I would say definitely during that month it's not public. If after that you say, okay, now, at least there's some potential, maybe after 2-3 more months, if things are still going well and you want to make it public, then do so. But just avoid out of exuberance, and excitement from the beginning, and assumption that things are definitely going to work, to make it public like from the very, very beginning. And that requires discipline, because you're definitely going to be seeing each other in public, but acting like you guys just hate each other. Because otherwise, people are going to be able to pick it up very quickly, right? So when you make it public early on, it adds a lot of stress to the relationship and almost expectation by all people that this is already a done deal. Like, this is going to work. Because they don't know the stage of relationship that you're in. They don't know what are the things you're still considering and debating and thinking about. Because like I said, you shouldn't be talking about those things. So when they see two people together, they're like automatically going to assume, okay, you guys are going to get married. And so it's better not to have that extra pressure until you're like much closer to making that choice. Yes. Yeah.
What are some significant questions that you feel are important to be asked, that you feel like a lot of people don't think to ask when they're starting to talk to somebody for the first time?
So a lot of the questions has to do with like how people view certain things and what kind of lifestyle people have. Now, it's better to observe rather than to get an answer. So for instance, like if, let's say, okay, you care about a person going to church every week, right? So you're like, do you think you should go to church every week? They're gonna be like, yeah. And you didn't learn much, right? Because they know that's the right answer, okay? What's better is to observe what they actually do, right? So you observe them, like, okay, you're observing if they're going to church, how often they're going to church. Do they go to Vespers and Praises? Do they serve in Sunday school? Do they say, you want to see them in their natural state, like as they are. But there's going to be some things that, you know, you can't really observe very well. And you just have to ask them about like their life philosophies. Like, so for instance, let's say when it comes to parenting, what kind of parenting style do they think is the right one? You know, and you can ask them about like, so what would you do if such and such happened? What would you do if your kids, you know, came home and there was, you know, something, I mean, like, to spur conversation and to like start bringing about different perspectives and viewpoints that then you can then like ask yourselves like, okay, is this really compatible with me? Sometimes you'll find people who have certain views that are not obvious. Like, you know, sometimes there'll be people who have views like one important thing to ask is like, okay, like, are we submitting to the church? Like, are we submitting to what the church says? Let's say the church comes and says something that we disagree with. It could be whatever. What are we going to do? You know, hypotheticals. So come up with hypothetical questions that you think could potentially come up. But also take the answers with a grain of salt. Because sometimes the answers could be like the quote-unquote right answer that they know is right. But follow it up by observation as much as you can of what they're actually practicing in their life. Also, one of the reasons to give the relationship time is because even if a person at the beginning is going to be on their best behavior, trying to like, you know, make sure they do everything right, eventually that kind of facade begins to fade, and what you're going to see is the real of them. You know, when the feeling of the interview mode is gone, and now I'm just kind of being myself, you're going to get to observe them and see things in them that you wouldn't necessarily have seen from the beginning. So, but yeah, definitely like all kinds of questions you can ask like that.
So you had mentioned that the engagement period is the period where that's where things are exposed. Like in regards to that person, like if there's somebody who objects to it,
Yeah.
why during the engagement period? Why can that not be
Well,
brought up before?
no, it definitely can. But what I'm saying is one of the reasons the engagement period exists is because a long time ago, no relationship would even be able to happen before the engagement is done. Like the first step would be, I want to get to know this person, you go talk to them, and then you guys get engaged. From the beginning.
So you're saying back then?
Back then. Nowadays, right, the idea that, yes, a relationship is public is one thing, but like there are some churches that even go to the extent of when any two people are getting engaged, they actually put it in the church announcements. Because they want it to be public to such a level that anyone who doesn't even necessarily know these two people very well and didn't necessarily know that they were even in a relationship, now everyone knows. Because if somebody realizes or knows that this person is married already, now they have a chance to say something.
One more question. How long is too long?
Unless there is a compelling reason, I would say more than a year is too long. Like unless there's a compelling reason, like okay, like it's a long distance relationship, or you know, one person is almost going to finish school and they have to graduate first. But again, like there's a trade-off here, right? Like on the one hand, you don't want to start it prematurely unless the person is getting close to being at a point where they're ready. But also, you don't want to miss an opportunity that's there. So, like, but I would say, like, typically, if it's 1 year or less to get to know each other before deciding, like, this is you're going to be married in a year, but before deciding that this is something that you want, like, and you've said, yes, we will get married, I would say 1 year.
It's not just the context of relationships, but in general, how do you approach the concept of whatever happens, like whatever you perceive as a failure or success as God's will because it happened, versus you're kind of using that as a scapegoat to when there's something fundamentally you should be changing? Like, how do you come to terms with that and not have that curiosity?
I mean, there's nothing that's 100% clear, right? There are times where maybe God gives us an opportunity, and through our own irresponsibility, we mess it up. I failed to study for the test. I failed to, do my role, and so I didn't get what I wanted, and it's really on me. It's not saying, okay, maybe this wasn't God's will that would happen. That's why, like, in the context of all these conversations, we're talking about a person who is single, who is struggling to do what is good. It doesn't mean that they're perfect, but it means that they're actively trying to repent. It means they're actively trying to do God's will. It means they're actively trying to pray. They're actively trying to do good. And God will take all of that and bless it and turn it into something good. And they can make that person to be in a relationship that supports them in that. But if a person is, though knowing all those things, is not actively pursuing any of them, and then comes to the point where now they're like wanting to get married, and they can't find someone, and the people that they want to marry are people that do have those qualities, and so they're not going to be interested in them. Like at that point you can say, it's like, well, maybe you neglected, for a long time before that, what you should have been doing. But that's not to say that we're not all sinners and we all have weaknesses. Like there will be many times where we don't do the right thing. But the question is how are you trying to live your life? Are you trying to live it with God or not? If you're trying to live it with God, then He will cover us. Like, one of the things we ask Him in the Thanksgiving prayers, that He covers us. Think about it this way. If we all knew everyone's sins, nobody would marry anyone. Because all of us have really bad sins that are hidden. We don't present them to each other. We don't go around, like, when we meet each other, be like, hey, let me tell you what I did today, right? We don't, right? And so a big part of, being able to marry, right, is not the same thing as me confessing all my sins to a person. But it's saying, am I in the sight of God trying to pursue righteousness, and He covers me and helps me to grow continually, whether before marriage or after marriage, and presents me a relationship that, though I am not perfect and though that person is not perfect, but it is something that is for my salvation. Remember, marriage is for our salvation. It is something that helps us to grow. It is for our benefit, something that God grants us. You think of like monasticism as, for salvation, and marriage for salvation. Like, those two things are like, couldn't be more opposite to each other. And yet they're both intended to help us with our salvation. So maybe even some of the difficulties, the weaknesses that I have will be corrected when I'm forced to be selfless enough to care for another person. And so it's not about reaching a certain level of perfection, but it's about an attitude of growth. I want to grow. And then I ask God, give me what is right for me at the right time. And so if it is not the right time, okay, it's not the right time yet. Maybe God has not chosen yet for this to be my time. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe the person God I'm going to meet is not ready. Whatever the case, right? So we can't answer that question definitively. But all we can say is, when God says, like, what is it that I should be doing today? We know the answer to that question. Today I should be seeking God. Today I should be trying my best to grow and to repent and to serve. And that's all I can answer. right? And if I do that to the best of my ability, then let it fall where it falls. Let it land where it lands. Because in the end, God will provide what is good and He will cover our sins. But if a person is actively running from God, not choosing a life of repentance, then we can't say the same. We can't say that in the end, that person, in Romans 8, where it says, all things work for good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. So if we don't love God, if we are not demonstrating that love in any way, then we also can't say that all things work for good. Yes?
When do you think is an appropriate time to introduce meeting with parents? Because I know it's kind of an American thing, but
I think it's very cultural. Like I know people who, like, from the very first day of, like, wanting to start talking, he would talk to the parents and be like, I just want to tell you that I'm interested in your daughter and we're going to start talking. And I know some people that happens very, very, very late. I tend to fall on the side of saying, like, talk to the parents when you feel like there is some potential in this continuing. So probably not from the first day, maybe after a month or two. If you feel like things are going in a good direction, then you can talk to the parents. But make sure the parents understand. Like, for instance, in the Egyptian culture, that whole official formal conversation is essentially done whenever you're ready to get married, right? And the man will go to the house of the parents of the woman and he will say, I want to ask for your hand in marriage, or your daughter's hand in marriage, and all that stuff is done between the parents together, right? And it's like this formal meeting. So that's kind of what's expected in Egyptian culture. But that's not to say that that's the only way to do it, right? But just the fact that the parents are aware that this is happening, I think is something that should be from the beginning. The formal meeting of the parents, it doesn't have to be the formal. It can be just like, okay, we're going to go have dinner, like they invited us to go and have dinner at their house so they get to know us. I would say once there is some sense that there is potential in this relationship after the first, say, couple months. Okay.
When you mentioned learning from relationships that didn't end up in marriage, how do you ask for that kind of feedback and any recommendations on any specific questions to get?
Sorry, what's the question? Asking
After a relationship didn't work out, you mentioned growing from it. Things you may have said, things you may have done. Are you supposed to assume those, or is that something you're supposed to ask about?
Ask the other person. Sometimes when you ask, you're not going to get the real answer. Sometimes it's more obvious. Like let's say you were together for a few months and there was like a recurring argument, right? Like there was a recurring conflict that happened. So it's very likely, even without necessarily asking, but it's related to that. There have been times where, troublingly, like one person will just suddenly disappear with no sign that this was even happening. Also, probably at that point, asking is not going to be helpful because at that point they're just gone. So sometimes you don't really know. But I would say that in most of the cases, you will get a sense of like, okay, what was the source of conflict? You'll be able to tell, like, from the other person, like, they didn't really like my answer to something. They're different than me in this and that, and maybe that's what it is. If it's something but another thing also, like, if it's something that I'm keeping my father confession in the loop about, then he also might be able to, like, give me general guidance, just like, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But it's really case by case. Yes?
What is so the getting to know stage, the dating phase and stuff? Are we finding reasons for things not to work, or are we trying to find reasons to make it work? Because I feel like either way you go about it, you'll find things to make it work or not to work with the other person.
Yeah. Yeah, you reminded me of one case where there was a couple and they were having a lot of conflicts together, And it became more and more clear that they weren't really compatible with each other. But they were so wanting to be together that they were like trying to force it, being like, well, we'll work on this, we'll work on this, we'll work on this, we'll work on this, and then enough, but the problems continue. So you're trying to discover what works naturally. There's always going to be some tweaking, right, that can be done. Like I can tweak like some behavior, let's say that I'm doing some minor thing that maybe bothers the other person, I can tweak it. I can tweak, like certain words that I say or not say or things like that. But when it comes to more fundamental things about my character and my personality, those things can't be changed. Like people just have to accept them as they are. So primarily your goal is to try to figure out if we are compatible together as we are, okay? And if we're not, then maybe this isn't the right relationship. But once two people kind of feel like, okay, we have 85%, of everything is good, how can we work on the remaining 15%? Actually, now this is what married couples do, right? Married couples, when they go to marriage counseling, what are they doing? They're saying, okay, well, we're already committed, we're already in it, right? So how do we improve it? How do we refine it? How do we get it even better, right? And so yes, that part of that process does happen even before you get married. You're trying to address the problems that arise. But at some point, the problems reach such a critical stage that they cannot be addressed, that they are just like, okay, this is a sign that this relationship is not going to work. But the line where that is not a very bright, defined line, And so it's kind of, a lot of times, it's based on like how committed you are to this person. And that's why we use the word commitment. Commitment means I'm choosing to accept this person with all their weaknesses. But once you've chosen to accept the person with all their weaknesses, don't go complain about it later, right? Like let's say, let's say you're a neat freak and you love things to be super neat and organized. And your spouse or your spouse to be, about her that she's extremely not neat and she's completely disorganized. And when you go to her house, everything's on top of everything, okay? And you're in your mind, you're like, I can't stand this, okay? Don't think that after you get married, your house is going to be neat. It's not going to be. And you have to accept it, that it's not going to be neat. You're going to tell yourself, you know what? All the good qualities that she has are so good that I'm willing to accept her for as she is and accept that my house is going to be a mess for eternity. Okay? That's just what you have to do. Because you cannot expect that she is going, now you could try to tweak it. And be like, can you please try this? And can you please try this? And maybe she will try. But she will never be as neat as you. Right? Ever. So any weakness or any incompatibility that you are aware of during this process, don't expect that it's going to change. And you're going to have to ask yourself, am I willing to accept her or him as they are, right, afterward?
What gifts from the container store?
Yeah, give subtle hints.
Very subtle.
Yes.
Are there specific things that fit into that 15% category that we should be letting go of?
Yeah, there could be a lot of things. Those are the things that you would let go of are the superficial things. Like, if you read in Proverbs 31 about the virtuous woman, right? And you see all these like really good qualities about this virtuous woman. And then it says, charm is fleeting and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Like, what is King Solomon trying to say in that? He's saying, all these things that I've said to you about this virtuous woman, they are what you should be looking for. And these other things that are not important, passing and fleeting, those are the things that are not important. That's from him. That's from the Bible. That's not coming from me. So there are things that are fleeting and passing. There are things that are, like ask yourself, who is the kind of person I want to raise my children? Who is the kind of person that is going to teach my children the fear of God? Who are the kind of person that is going to forgive when they are offended? Who is the look at those qualities that require the work of the Holy Spirit. And if I find those things that require the work of the Holy Spirit in a person, things that are rare, things that are not common, those are the things you don't let go of. Things like beauty, things like that, it's a dime a dozen, to be honest. Like Like, you can find people who are extremely immoral that are gorgeous. So what? Like, the whole point of that, like, chapter is to say that those things are not as important and they don't last. And that's maybe the more important thing, is they don't last. Like, if you marry someone for something that is fleeting, right, then however much you enjoy that quality at the beginning, right, that quality will not remain. And once it's gone, like, then what are you going to do, right? Marry them for something that will abide, that will remain, right? And so, like, I'm not going to give a specific list of things, but just ask yourself that criteria. Like, what is something that is rare? What is something that is not common to be found and that requires the work of the Holy Spirit? Like, it's a sign of that person's godliness and holiness. Something that is going to benefit me and my family in the future. Also, put yourself, try to pretend like you're 60 years old. Okay? Don't answer this question as a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. Right? Ask yourself, like, when I'm 60, what is it that I'm going to care about in a wife or in a husband? That's what you need to find now. Okay? Don't just find, like, the cool, attractive, exciting person that all their qualities are just that, that makes you feel excited and happy now. That person might not be the best spouse to have when you're 60 years old. Might not be the best spouse to have when you have children. Right? Look for the qualities that abide and that will benefit you and grow you. Again, read like again Proverbs 31. So that's again, I'm not going to list specifics, but just look for things that will abide. That's it. Okay? Okay, pray. I'm gonna have to pray for us now.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and bless, O Lord, everyone here, Lord. Bless all their decisions, O Lord. Guide them, enlighten them, O Lord. Establish your peace within their hearts, O Lord, in all their endeavors and all their pursuits. Guide us all to your glory, to your kingdom, and accept, O Lord, all our prayers. Through your prayers and intercessions of all your saints, hear us, O Lord, as we pray thankfully, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive our trespasses against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil one. And precious is thy word, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Now, Lord God, the Father, grace is only Son, and give common Holy Spirit, be with you all. Go in peace to peace, and glory be with you. Thank you. Huge.